I'm sorry I'm barefoot. I'm not actually usually very presentable where I live, so, which you're going to see. But yeah, in stark contrast to what Dr. Chetan has to deal with neglect at home on safety, I feel what I'm going to be addressing today is the fact that sometimes when we go out in nature, it looks like every square inch of it is covered in button batteries. And everything can bite, everything can hurt you, everything has the potential to be dangerous. Whereas with connection, with time spent in nature, we realize it's not really so. That also works?
Back and forward.
Okay, thank you. All right. So under this very beautiful quote by Mary Oliver is a picture of where I live and work. This is Liana Forest Farm. The word liana actually means any creeper that gets really thick and woody. They are seen in old forests. They go from tree to tree, connecting the woods. And animals use them as pathways to move around. They support a whole lot of life. I love the interconnectedness of it as a symbol, which is why we named it that. But also I live in the secret hope that one day this land will have maybe just one liana on it in my lifetime. Right now all the creepers are lean and scrawny because this is what the farm looked like 8 years ago. It was once a really intensively farmed space with a lot of sort of chemical use and pesticides and fertilizers. The soil was very dusty, sandy, rocky, and the layout is very typical of Karnataka farms where you have coconut trees and monoculture in between. So for the past 8 years, we filled the fields with almost 4 feet of coconut fronds, coconut husk, leaves, weeds, and then we would let the monsoon sort of make them rot and go into the soil and become this beautiful black mulch. And then we planted trees, just hundreds and hundreds of trees. Today, this is the house that we live in. It's beautiful. There are spiders the size of my palm in almost every room in the house. In the monsoon, you feel almost amphibious. You're almost always a little wet, even the bed sheets are damp. And all the walls get like these thousands and thousands of beetles with which we have to sort of sweep out of the house, because otherwise at night they might fall onto my toddler, wake him up, and we hardly get sleep as it is. So that's a no-no. But I can't imagine it any other way anymore, honestly. This is the window above my bed. And the way the life has bounced back in this space in just 8 years is something we would never have been able to predict. In 2015, there were about 50 recorded species of birds on the farm. Today there are 176. We have countless, thank you. We have just countless arachnids and insects everywhere, in the rooms, in our ears, all over the place. We have 17 species of snakes that we peacefully, coexist with absolutely no problem. They're wonderful to have around. We have leopards, jackals, bats, civets, jungle cat, a mouse deer just once, black-naped hare, all kinds of cool animals visiting. And yes, I can hear the ooze. This is a very beautiful illustration of a Russell's viper. I thought it'd be less triggering than the actual snake for a lot of people. So we run a conservation and education base. And one of our focuses, my husband is a herpetologist, is actually on human-snake conflict mitigation, which is to bring down the number of bites that we face from snakes and to increase the possibility of actually coexisting peacefully around snakes, which is what people in India have actually managed to do for many years. Currently, we lose almost 60,000 people a year in the country to snake bite, and many more suffer a loss of limb or life function. So it's a huge problem. It's a rural problem. It's not a problem that people in urban areas face, and so it's not necessarily a problem that a lot of money is thrown at tackling. We work on the full gamut of this issue, from researching what the snakes are doing, why are we coming into contact with so many snakes, why are so many snakes biting. This is done by putting a chip into especially Ross's vipers, which cause most of the bites. and following them around our nearby villages and seeing how they're behaving through the day, through the year. We try and educate people on how not to get bitten, safe practices in sort of day-to-day habits. We try and educate people on what to do if there is a snake bite, what's the first aid protocol. Then we have to try and educate medical practitioners on what to do if a snake bite patient comes in, because in India that practice is very weak. Then we have to work on the anti-venom that is given to people who are snake bite victims, because in India that is very poor. So we have our work cut out for us, but it's been a very rewarding experience as an educator, especially, I feel. So one of my goals is to see if curriculum can reduce the instances of conflict and can increase the way we coexist with different species, the way we look at species, if we can change that. And it's a bit of a dive into the deep end of a pool, really, when you start that with snakes, right? Because that's where all the phobias are, and that's where so many mindsets are so strong. But today, in our village, people allow us to release snakes just outside the house. So if there's a snake inside their bathroom, we take it out from there and we put it right at their doorstep, and it scurries away into their agricultural, plot, somewhere in their space, very much still. But they're okay with that, because if you remove the snake from there and send it to the forest where we think it belongs, it'll actually die. So we've proven now over many studies, around the world, that snakes can't survive relocation. A lot of animals can't survive being relocated. So when we think we're doing animals a favor by removing them from our home and leaving them in the wild, that's not necessarily how they look at it. Yeah? This is my son. This is Rahil. You'll see a lot of him because it was very easy to get permission to use his pictures from his parents. So we raised him quite literally on a diet of mud and leaves. There was really no getting around it. He constantly picked up something and put it in his mouth. When he was 2.5 or so, he held his first snake. Up till then, we didn't feel it was safe for the snake to be held by him. And it's true, because that's a corn snake. It's non-venomous, completely harmless, shy, beautiful, and it's a captive animal here. It's part of the exotic pet trade in India, don't ask me why, but we end up adopting a lot of these animals. So it's staying with us, and it has to be taken out of its enclosure to be basked. But it's so fragile and thin and delicate that if Rahil was to squeeze it right now, that would almost definitely break one of its bones inside. And then that would mean that it wouldn't be able to sort of swallow its food or digest it, or it could sort of affect some part of its system, and it would most probably die. So really, while this snake can do nothing to that little toddler, that toddler can be very dangerous to the snake. And it was only once we were 1,000% sure. Rahil, when he was born, I used to wear him around the farm, and he would sort of touch different things, and I would teach him the gentle hand. We would use that word again and again and again and again, and I would keep showing him, how we would touch animals and leaves and plants. And it was only when we were completely sure that he wasn't going to do anything to the snake that we let him hold one. Now he's 5.5. He's my guinea pig and test subject for all my curriculum. He spends his life making seed buttons, and I don't know what he's doing there, painting fences, going kayaking in the lake that's abutting the farm. He splashes around in every puddle. He makes his own fishing rods, which haven't come to any use yet. He's excellent as a farm hand. We're hoping to retire early, as soon as he's ready to take over. And it's been wonderful. One of the concerns my family had when I was doing this, my brother would keep joking, is that, you're raising this little Mowgli, and you're going to bring him to the city, and he's going to, look at people and be like, I know, speak human. And but we all know that actually, you develop language really well, amazingly out in nature. And like we learned this morning, writing comes first. Yeah. So since he was very young, he has a very uncle personality. So he's been putting like labels on everything and instructions, do's and don'ts everywhere, like warning, beautiful spider web. So that was on a table so that nobody would sort of put their hand on the spider web. This is don't ever drink, which is for the bioenzyme, which is the cleaner that we make at home. That's a letter he's written to a friend of his in Bombay. We got him a pen pal through a friend when he was 4 years old, because he doesn't like doing anything, whether it's language, math, anything, unless it's real and for an actual purpose. So I couldn't get him to do F, 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 F as in his school book, but this he didn't mind. It's the same with math. Farms are a wonderful place to learn and practice math. I actually, being a Montessori teacher, use a lot of the Montessori material whenever he would let me teach him anything. And so he grew up sort of, learning the concepts with the material and then practicing them in day-to-day life on the farm. He does a lot of carpentry. I can't recommend this enough to schools. Carpentry is such an excellent way for, to build pre-math and math skills. In the middle, he's actually learning how to measure a snake. That's a rubber snake, guys, don't worry. And in the last picture, we'd set up a little farm stall when he was 2 for him to practice, being a salesperson and doing all his calculations. So, sorry, 3 years old, yeah. Yeah, now, the childhood that he's having is not perfect by any stretch of imagination. There are things that we do well, there are places where we fail miserably as parents. But I think it's the single greatest privilege of my life to be able to raise him in the environment that I'm raising him in. Yeah? And I didn't grow up in this environment. I grew up in Delhi, right? But I grew up as a complete wild child. And this was a big feat for my mother to have accomplished. She's also a Montessorian. Because in the city, obviously, you don't have these opportunities. Yet, when I look at this life, when I look at my comfort with palm-sized spiders and snakes, it's because of the childhood that I was given, very much bang in the middle of a big city. Of course, this was many moons ago, so there used to be more geckos on the walls, there were more moths coming to the light, there was a lot more oxygen in the air. But it was no wilderness. Some of my earliest memories are really of the trees around my house. I was always very excited to go climbing whatever I saw. I know that I'm not alone in this room to have gone and collected parijat flowers, when it sheds this beautiful carpet on the floor. I know I'm not the only one who thinks that white petal is edible and the rest of the flower is to be thrown and then used for stamen fights. Yeah, it's not true. You can eat the whole thing. Right outside my house, there used to be a milkweed bush, which in season would get covered by these plain tiger caterpillars. And my brother and I would watch these butterflies come and land. They would keep landing randomly on leaves first, because butterflies actually taste with their feet. So they would land on the leaf, they would taste and see, is this the right food plant for my kiddo? And then they would lay their eggs there. And my brother and I would whip out our magnifying glasses, have a competition on who could spot more. Then we would watch them, well, not usually catch them hatch, but definitely grow as caterpillars. My mom had given us this little worksheet where we would put a date under the instar each day that it was, and we would color it, and then we would watch it pupate, and finally when it was time, around the time for the butterflies to emerge, you can't always predict it, we would